You've got the beat playing, you've carved out the time, you've even got a loose concept for what you want to write about. Everything's set up perfectly for you to craft your next classic verse. There's just one problem: nothing's coming out. Your mind's going completely blank, like someone hit the reset button on your creativity. Look, we've all been there, that frustrating moment when your brain refuses to cooperate, when each bar feels forced, when you start questioning if you've lost your touch completely. But what if we told you writer's block is BS? What if I told you the very concept is holding you back more than any actual creative barrier ever could? In today's episode of How to Rap, we're going to expose the lie you've been telling yourself and give you 3 concrete strategies that professional rappers use to keep creating even when inspiration seems miles away. Now, before we dive deeper, if you're an artist watching this who's tired of staring at blank pages and wants to permanently defeat writer's block, click the first link in the video description box to get our Freestyle Fortnite course. This 2-week training program will transform how you approach writing by teaching you to create rhymes spontaneously to any beat. You'll even learn how to generate full songs off the top of your dome without overthinking every bar. The course includes exclusive techniques not covered here in this video, so it's absolutely worth checking out if you're serious about leveling up your writing process instantly. But with that said, let's get into the first key to defeating writer's block. First and foremost, writer's block doesn't exist. There, I said it. You see, what you're calling writer's block is actually perfectionism wearing a mask. It's not some mysterious force locking up your brain. It's you, afraid that whatever you write next won't measure up. Think about it. Is there actually something physically stopping your hand from moving? Is there some magical barrier between your thoughts and the page? Hell no. What's happening is you've built this idea that your next verse has to be mind-blowing, earth-shattering, career-defining. You're paralyzed by the weight of your own expectations. So, writer's block ain't about lacking ideas, it's about lacking permission to let those ideas exist in their raw form. Look at J. Cole. Dude's been on an absolute tear with his features throughout 2023 and 2024. He jumped on Lil Durk's All My Life and took it to number 2 on the Billboard charts. That verse wasn't some mythical creation that descended from the heavens. Cole sat down and wrote that joint. Then he hopped on First Person Shooter with Drake and declared himself part of the Big 3, which ironically, after what happened next, became his first #1 hit on the Hot 100. Cole's even admitted to having phases where his output wasn't his best. Remember the debate around his verse on Grippy with Cash Cobain in 2024? Some fans were questioning if Cole was falling off, creating Reddit theories about how it was intentionally bad as part of the Fall Off album rollout. But that's the point. Cole didn't let that criticism paralyze him. He kept creating, kept releasing music. The proof is in the title of his 2024 mixtape, Might Delete Later. The name itself tells you everything about his mindset. Not everything needs to be permanent. Not everything needs to be perfect. Sometimes you just need to create and put it out there. That tape had raw, unfiltered tracks, including 7-minute drill aimed at Kendrick that he later apologized for. But that's the point. He created it, released it, and moved forward. Even the greatest have entire years of disappointing output. Jay-Z isn't walking around calling Kingdom Come his best work. Eminem knows Encore wasn't his finest hour, but they kept creating because they understand something fundamental. Their careers aren't built on one perfect verse or one perfect song, they're built on consistent creation. Sometimes what they make resonates more than others, but they keep creating rather than letting perfectionism freeze them. So here's what's really happening when you're blocked. That voice in your head is turned into a tyrant. It's telling you that if you write something whack, your rap career is done. It's telling you that one mediocre verse means you don't have what it takes. It's telling you that unless your next 16 bars change the game forever, you might as well quit now. So here's the first step to killing your so-called writer's block. Recognize it as fear wearing a fancy name tag. Your next verse doesn't need to change the game forever. It doesn't need to be the best thing you've ever written. It just needs to exist so you can move on to the next one and the next one after that. When you're staring at that blank page, tell yourself, this might be trash and that's okay. Give yourself permission to write garbage. Most of the time, it won't be nearly as bad as you think. And even when it is trash, that trash becomes the fertilizer for the fire verses coming later. Every rapper you respect has written verses they never let see the light of day. The difference is they kept writing anyway, which brings us to our next step. The delete button might be the most powerful tool in your arsenal. No, seriously. For every verse that makes it onto a classic album, there's a graveyard of discarded bars that didn't make the cut. The greatest rappers aren't the ones who never write trash. They're the ones who recognize the trash and aren't afraid to throw it away. They don't cling to mediocre work out of sentimentality or because they spent time on it. They understand that sometimes starting fresh beats, trying to resurrect a dying verse, kind of related to that first step. I'm telling you something right now, write a verse, and if it's messed up, just delete it or throw it away. Whatever you do when you write, there's nothing wrong with warming up. There's nothing wrong with taking some time to figure out what you want out of this verse, especially if you like the beat a lot and you're really like, I want this to be a classic, delete it. Look at Kendrick Lamar. Between 2012's Good Kid, Mad City and 2017's Damn, Kendrick was dropping a major project roughly every 18 months, To Pimp a Butterfly in 2015, Untitled Unmastered in 2016. The man was prolific, but what you don't see is the mountain of material that never made the final cut. For every track that landed on these albums, Kendrick created multiple versions and alternatives. After Damn, Kendrick went quiet for 5 years before dropping Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers in 2022. You think he wasn't creating during that time? Of course he was. He was making tons of music, but being extremely selective about what actually saw the light of day. The documentary P.G. Lang's New Thoughts that dropped alongside GNX in late 2024 revealed that Kendrick actually completed and then scrapped 2 entire albums during that 5-year gap. When Mr. Morale didn't get the same reception as his earlier work, Kendrick didn't panic or rush out more music to compensate. He strategically chose his spots, dropping that now iconic verse on Family Ties with Baby Keem that reminded everyone why he's considered one of the greatest to ever do it. Then came the Drake battle in 2024, A Gift wrapped with a bow. Kendrick didn't rush out a hasty response. He crafted multiple calculated diss tracks, building to Not Like Us, which topped the Billboard Hot 100 and became a cultural phenomenon. In interviews after the battle, Kendrick's engineer revealed they recorded 10 different diss tracks before landing on the ones they actually released. That's the power of being willing to delete. What makes Kendrick's approach so powerful is his ruthless selectivity. He creates constantly but releases strategically. He's not afraid to shelve entire songs, sometimes entire projects, if they don't align with his vision. So when you catch yourself struggling with a verse or hook that just isn't clicking, sometimes the best move is to trash it and start from scratch. That's not failure. It's recognizing that your creative energy is better spent building something new than trying to resurrect something that's already dead. Think about it like this. Would you rather spend 3 hours trying to fix a verse that's fundamentally broken or spend 1 hour writing a new verse that might actually be fire? The math ain't complicated. Deletion isn't surrender, it's strategy. It's recognizing when something isn't working and having the courage to start over. That's how you keep your creative energy flowing instead of getting stuck in a loop trying to salvage something that should have been buried 3 drafts ago. The modern age has made this even easier. Most of y'all write on your phone, computer, or without actually writing at all, the Lil Wayne method. So just delete it if it's whack. There's no tape to rewind, no paper to crumple up, just highlight and delete. Similarly, you don't even have to write a full song in order to get out of writer's block, as we show in the next step. Want to kill your creativity instantly? Try to create a masterpiece in one sitting. Instead, commit to writing 8 bars. Set a timer for 15 minutes and write whatever comes to mind. These smaller tasks cut the intimidation factor in half and give you concrete wins to build momentum. Number 3 is set a small goal. It doesn't have to be massive. You ain't gotta be like, okay, I need to write this classic right now. If it ain't on the level of Shady or Kendrick, man, I'm terrible. Forget all that. Just set a small goal, like I'm gonna write 8 bars and then I'm gonna go do something else, or I'll write 16 and then I'm gonna go do the laundry or whatever. So set a smaller goal and finish the verse no matter how whack it is. JID's approach to the forever story is the perfect blueprint. This album came nearly 4 years after his previous project DiCaprio 2, with massive expectations from fans and critics alike. The pressure to deliver could have frozen him completely. Instead of trying to create the entire album at once, JID chopped it into manageable pieces. He started by dropping surround sound with 21 Savage and Baby Tate in January 2022, testing the waters while building the rest of the album. That single gave him confidence and feedback for the journey ahead. That's the small goals mindset in action. He doesn't force himself to complete entire songs in one sitting. By approaching these personal narratives one at a time rather than trying to tell his entire life story in a single session, he crafted detailed verses that hit hard with authenticity. What's particularly revealing is how JID handled obstacles. He initially planned to include 2007 Inches as the album's final track, a narrative-driven song about his journey from football player to rapper. And we've seen this small goals approach from other top-tier lyricists too. Denzel Curry's rollout for King of the Mischievous South Volume 2 Inches in 2024 was all about manageable pieces. He dropped singles like Blood on My Nikes featuring Juicy J and Sked featuring Kenny Mason over several months, building momentum instead of trying to create the entire album at once. Each single was a small goal achieved, giving him confidence for the next step. The lesson is clear: you don't need to write your masterpiece in one marathon session. If you're stuck, lower the stakes dramatically. Tell yourself, I'm just gonna write for 20 minutes, or I'm just gonna finish these 4 bars. Once you've nailed that small goal, set another one. Before you know it, those small victories stack up into completed verses, songs, and eventually entire projects. This approach works because it bypasses the pressure that causes block in the first place. When you're focused on a small, doable task instead of creating perfection, you actually put words on the page, and that's what matters most. Generating material you can later refine rather than waiting for perfect inspiration that rarely comes. Remember that every classic verse started with a single bar, every legendary album began with one song. By breaking down the creative process into smaller goals, you make it less intimidating and more accessible, even when inspiration feels miles away. So follow all 3 steps right now. You can say, I'm gonna write a verse, it's only gotta be 16. If it's whack, I'll delete it and I'll accept that it's whack and move on. Use all these tools and you'll push through any writing block you encounter. With that said, if you wanna crush writer's block even harder, be sure to visit the video description box below to get that freestyle course. Thanks for joining us for another episode of How to Rap in Peace.